Hi, I'm Matt Hines here with DevOps TV for DevOps.com at the DevOps Enterprise Summit 2016. I'm joined by Cornelia from Pivotal, who, again, you were here talking about culture this year, always one of the core elements of any DevOps discussion. What can you tell us a little bit about your talk? I know it dealt with different roles.
Yeah, sure. And I, being a technologist by background, never talk about culture without technology in there as well, so I'll kind of fill that in a little bit. So I did a talk on DevOps Who Does What, and the genesis actually of this talk was that I was working with a customer who had laid out for us their very detailed process that they went through, 55-step process that they went through to deploy applications into production. And it was so detailed that they had about 16 different roles that they identified, very specific roles that they identified across 6 different silos. And it was really in studying this work that I realized that there was some work that I wanted to do here. And so that was really what was realized in the presentation that I gave today. So what we did was we took these roles and we genericized them. They're not specifically from this customer, but they're so common across the industry. Everybody has very similar roles and very similar silos. And we took those 16 roles or 18 roles across 6 different silos and we sorted them. We said, okay, in a new world, in a product-oriented world where product teams rather than project teams are responsible for outcomes, how do those traditional roles actually get recast into this product mindset?
So, yeah, I mean, that's fascinating, right? 55 different processes across 16 silos. It's a lot of multitasking for people. Although, I guess within the context of DevOps and cross-functional, things only get more, potentially complicated. How's it actually changing? How are people's roles transitioning?
Well, what's interesting is, as I mentioned, that we sorted, and so I used the Harry Potter analogy. So we sorted into houses. And so to set the stage, first of all, we have to think about what are the houses that we're going to sort into. And this is where I say I'm not just going to talk about culture, I talk about technology as well. Sure. One of the great enablers of this cultural change is some of the changes in technology, in particular the cloud and some of the APIs around the cloud. So the fact that you don't have to provision physical infrastructure anymore to do something, that you can get resources via API call, or when you up-level that even to the platform level where it's not just infrastructure, but you get platform as a service. And you can now do those things as an API call. That enables all sorts of changes in the roles and the cultures. And so the first 2 houses that I started out with in the talk were the platform team. So the platform team that's responsible for providing essentially this dial tone, this API to the application team, so that the application team can own their product from front to back, self-service provision the capacity that they need, monitor, do all of those things so that they are completely self-sufficient. The platform team, typically in the past, an infrastructure team didn't operate as a product team. They kind of were a little bit more short order cooks.
Right, they kept the lights on.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so people were constantly, screaming for the next, eggs over easy that they needed, and you had to scramble to get it done. So now we take a kind of a cultural mindset where we say the platform team, the team that's responsible for providing the capacity to the app team, they're a product team too. They have customers, just like any other product team. The customers are those app teams. So those are our first 2 houses, is the team that's providing the platform and the team that's consuming the platform in providing an application. And so there's a few really interesting ones. So for example, capacity planning, which was typically something that came out of an infrastructure silo. And they would try to estimate how much capacity would be needed by an application, which is an inherently difficult thing to do.
Right.
You almost always got it wrong, so you ended up over-provisioning. Well, now, by splitting out these houses and making them responsible for different cross-sections, we split the capacity planning function into each of those teams. They're each responsible for monitoring their own needs and working within the confines of what they've been allocated. So the infrastructure team, the platform team has been allocated a certain amount of infrastructure. The app team has been allocated a certain amount of application capacity. We do that via the contract that we use is something like a quota. So capacity planning splits out over each of the two houses. Another super interesting one is functions like change management. So change management or chief security officers, those are functions that are typically checkbox functions. So they sit in the critical path to getting to production, so that when you're on your way to production, well, you have to go through change management to get, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this other thing? Same thing with security. What we do with those roles, the chief security role or the change management, is we actually align them with the platform team.
Sure.
And we say, instead of making those things manual checkboxes, let's implement things into the platform so that we can shift. So for example, in change management, we worked with a client about a year ago where we spent one day with the head of change management. And once he understood the capabilities of the platform and the restrictions that the platform put on the process, i.e. not everybody could do anything they wanted with the infrastructure, we were able to do one more tweak in the platform, and he moved from being an approver to being an auditor. And that's a hugely powerful metaphor, because now instead of being the stop for deploying things into production, he was now, you could just deploy into production because he was confident that things weren't going to go awry, and now he was just able to audit on the back end.
That's a sea change, right? And just quickly, I mean, I'm glad you didn't go down, the long road with the Harry Potter analogy, because my kids would get it, but I didn't. I'm much more relatable to food, right? And those sort of the line cooks, right? I don't know whether the kitchen is becoming more articulated, or we've got people who are, glorified line cooks, and they're able to do a little bit of everything. I guess just quickly, Cornelia, what are you seeing in terms of how the tooling is supporting the changing roles? Like, how is the tooling driving, or vice versa, this change culturally? Where are I know it's a broad question, but, if there's one particular point where you're seeing stickiness in terms of, how roles are adapting to the specific tooling, or vice versa, what would that be?
I think that the single biggest thing is self-service. Because in order to make any kind of a change, people, process, any kind of a cultural change, you have to empower teams. And a team can't be empowered if they have to go begging for stuff from somebody else. And so having that self-service, the ability to get what you need when you need it. Now, of course, it can't be the wild, wild west, so it needs to be controlled. But empowering them to get what they need and still maintain those controls, like we just talked about with the change management.
Sure.
That, I think, is the single biggest technology enabler of the DevOps and the cultural change.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, don't give me access to the pantry. I'll use every pot and pan in the house. Now, I think it's a neat analogy that works. And yeah, thanks again for joining us. It was really great to hear about this. We're here at DevOps Enterprise Summit 2016, DevOps TV, DevOps.com. Thanks for joining us.